Some people do not collapse in front of 10,000 enemies, yet they fall apart because one secret is handed to the wrong person. Some strength is enough to tear apart a lion, smash through city gates, and shake an entire empire. Yet it is powerless against a sweet whisper and a heart placed in the wrong hands. And some tragedies do not begin with a major sin, but with compromises so small you tell yourself, "It will be fine." The story you are about to hear is not just a story about supernatural strength or an ancient hero. This is a story about a covenant, about a gift granted from above, and about the terrifying price people pay when they forget this. Anything Allah gives, He can take back in an instant. This story will make you ask yourself, if Allah removed the one thing holding your life together today, what would you have left? Welcome to Prophetic History Explained, where we do not only retell the history of the prophets, we step into the painful, honest, and uncompromising lessons these stories leave behind for every generation. Before we begin this journey, if you are looking for stories that make your heart go quiet, wake your mind up, and force your faith to be examined at the roots, subscribe and support Prophetic History Explained, so we can keep bringing the deepest and most truthful content about prophetic history. The story of Syamun, peace be upon him, does not begin with glory. It begins in darkness. The darkness of a nation under oppression, of people forced to bow before idol worshippers, of prayers falling into long nights that seemed unanswered. In that era, the descendants of Israel were scattered, lost, slowly forgetting their covenant with Allah and trading faith for survival. In a small village, there were two righteous people whose names were never recorded in history. They were not kings. They were not warriors. They held no power in their hands. All they had was patience and prayers that never stopped. For many years, they lived through the trial of infertility, watching time pass, watching youth fade, yet never letting go of the belief that Allah is never late. And then, at the moment that felt like despair, an angel of Allah came, not only to announce a child, but to deliver a covenant. The child about to be born did not belong to them alone, and did not even belong to himself. His life was already designated as an amanah, a trust, a mission, a responsibility so heavy that conditions were set before he was even born. The mother had to maintain complete purity. No wine, nothing impure, no carelessness. And when the child was born, one sign could never be erased. His hair was not to be cut. Not because the hair itself was magical, but because it would be a constant reminder that his strength would not come from his body, but from loyalty to Allah. As long as the covenant was kept, the blessing remained. If the covenant was broken, everything would collapse. Syamun was born in the light of a promise, but also under the shadow of a terrifying test. From his first breath, he could not forget that he was not like others. Strength would come to him, but it would not be a prize. It would be an imtihan, a test. It could lift him up, but it could also drag him down deeper than anyone. This is where the story becomes frightening. Because Syamun was not tested with poverty or weakness, but with power. And not everyone who is given power stays awake enough to carry it to the end of their life without losing themselves. Even here, the story quietly asks each of us a question. What is the greatest blessing in your life? And are you holding it as an amanah, or treating it like it belongs to you forever? And that is only the beginning. Syamun entered adulthood unlike any man among his people. From his earliest years, the difference was obvious, not only in his body or physical strength, but in the feeling that his life was being guided by an unseen hand. While other children were still learning to stand steady, Syamun could lift what made grown men stare. While other young men needed weapons to protect themselves, he needed only his bare hands. But what made Syamun truly different was not strength itself. It was how he understood it. He was not raised to see strength as privilege, but as responsibility. Years spent beside his father, listening to the Torah recited again and again, planted a core truth in his mind. Allah does not grant strength so people can dominate others, but so justice can be protected when justice is being crushed. And when the time came, that strength was no longer private. Rumors spread quickly through oppressed Israelite communities. People whispered about a man who could do what entire units could not. These stories were not told to glorify Syamun, but to revive hope that was nearly dead. In every retelling, people saw more than a warrior. They saw a sign that Allah had not abandoned them. Syamun did not go looking for war. Injustice came looking for him. Wherever elders were humiliated, wherever the weak were forced to bow before false idols, he appeared. Not with dreams of toppling an empire, but with the determination to remind the oppressors that there were limits they were not allowed to cross. Each victory was not only a military loss for the Philistines, it was a direct strike against the fear that had chained the people for years. For 20 years, Syamun served as both judge and protector. He did not sit on a throne. He did not wear royal clothing. He did not build a personal brand. He moved from village to village, hearing disputes, restoring justice, reminding the descendants of Israel that real strength is not in numbers or weapons, but in standing with Allah when doing so becomes most dangerous. During this time, Syamun's glory reached its peak. The Philistines became afraid not because he was always present, but because they never knew when he would appear. One man was enough to destroy the plans of an entire army, enough to collapse the illusion of invincibility the oppressors had built. And for the people, Syamun was not only the strongest man, he was living proof that their prayers had been heard. But this is also when another danger quietly began to grow. When strength is used repeatedly without being lost, it becomes easy to confuse the blessing with yourself. When danger keeps ending in victory, vigilance is slowly replaced by the feeling that everything will always work out. And when others keep staring at you as a symbol, it becomes difficult not to start seeing yourself through their eyes. Syamun did not become openly arrogant. He did not declare himself untouchable. But deep down, familiarity with power made him less guarded against his own heart. He had grown used to Allah always being behind him, until he began to forget that this was only true as long as the covenant was fully honored. Syamun's mission was to free his people, and he fulfilled it with excellence. But every great mission carries a trial proportional to its size. The trial did not come from enemies outside, but from the sense of safety born in the most successful years. At the very peak of his glory, when no one doubted his strength and a nation placed its hope in him, the seed of tragedy quietly took root. And Syamun, even as a prophet and a man blessed by Allah, was still human. A human with a heart, with emotions, with blind spots his own strength could not protect him from. Those glorious years were not only proof of Allah's power, they were also the opening notes of a harsh lesson. The greatest blessings often carry the most dangerous tests, and not everyone recognizes that while they are still standing at the top. Syamun's tragedy did not begin with betrayal, and it did not begin with an obvious sin. It began with something deeply human, the feeling that he still had control. After years of victory, after countless escapes that seemed impossible, Syamun had grown used to walking out of danger without paying a price. And that familiarity numbed something crucial: inner vigilance. Delilah entered not as an enemy, but as a pause in the tension of those long years. Not swords, not battlefields, just softness, listening, closeness. The kind that lowers a person's guard. Delilah did not need to look wicked. She only needed to be different from Syamun in one essential way. She did not share the same covenant with Allah. And that single difference, if not recognized in time, was enough to open the road to collapse. The Philistine rulers were not foolish. They understood Syamun could not be defeated by force. Armies that failed against him proved that. So they did not seek a direct confrontation. They approached him from the direction he least expected, his heart. They saw Delilah, and they understood that where physical strength is useless, emotion can do what 1,000 soldiers cannot. The most dangerous part is that Delilah did not rush. She did not ask for the secret immediately. She did not force him. She did not reveal her intention. She let things unfold slowly enough that Syamun did not notice he was nearing a deadly boundary. And when the first question came, it did not feel like betrayal. It felt like harmless curiosity. Where does your strength come from? A question that sounded innocent but aimed directly at the most sacred covenant of his life. Syamun was not naive. He sensed something was off. That is why he did not tell the truth. He tested, he avoided, he gave false answers. But here, a subtle mistake happened. Instead of leaving the moment his instincts warned him, he stayed and played with danger. He believed he could stand near the edge without stepping over. He believed he was strong enough to be unharmed. 3 times traps were set. 3 times Syamun was tied. 3 times enemies waited in the shadows. 3 times Allah sent signs clearer than anything else. And 3 times Syamun broke free. But instead of taking it as a warning to turn back, he treated it as proof that everything was still under control. The danger of a blessing is not the blessing itself, it is the false safety it can create. Delilah did not stop. When the early schemes failed, she changed tactics. No more questions, now pressure. No more curiosity, now twisted emotion. She made Syamun feel like he owed her honesty. She made him doubt his own feelings. She made him believe that keeping a secret was betrayal. And this is the most dangerous manipulation of all, making loyalty to Allah look like cruelty toward a person. Day after day, the nagging, the blame, the emotional grinding wore down Syamun's inner resistance. No punches, no screaming, just a long exhaustion that makes a person want to end it by speaking once, just once. And when exhaustion overtakes clarity, principles that once could not be moved begin to look negotiable. What makes this part painful is not that Syamun was tricked, but that he was warned again and again. No one forced him to stay. No one forced him to answer. Yet he chose to keep going. And that choice reveals a hard truth. Sometimes people fall not because they cannot tell right from wrong, but because they do not want to let go of what they are attached to, even when they know it is pulling them toward the cliff. Syamun defeated countless enemies outside, but slowly lost the battle inside. And as he moved closer to the secret of the covenant, it was not because he wanted to betray Allah, but because he believed he could keep both. The covenant with heaven and attachment to someone who did not walk the same path. At that point, tragedy was no longer a possibility. It was inevitable. The moment Syamun finally revealed his secret did not come with thunder or loud tragedy. It came through exhaustion, through the state of someone worn down too long by emotional pressure, by repeated accusations, by the desire for peace even once. He did not betray Allah through open defiance, but through a quiet letting go. And that quiet surrender shook the entire foundation of his life. When the blade touched the hair that had never been cut since his birth, no lightning struck. No instant sign announced that everything was over. Syamun still slept. But in the unseen world, something terrible happened. The covenant was broken, not because hair had magic, but because it was the final visible sign of loyalty. And when that sign disappeared, the blessing of Allah quietly withdrew. Syamun woke up with the familiar confidence that he would rise again like every time before. But this time, When he tried to surge up, his body did not respond. Not because his muscles had suddenly weakened, but because Allah allowed him to feel the full truth. A human being is nothing when cut off from Allah's protection. The strength that once made armies tremble was now not enough against a few rough hands rushing in. That moment was not only defeat, it was a brutal awakening. Syamun realized what he lost was not ability but connection, and once that connection was cut, he was fragile like anyone else. The Philistines did not waste the chance. They bound him not only to imprison him, but to prove that the man who terrified them was now completely powerless. The gouging of Syamun's eyes was not only physical torture, it was symbolic humiliation. The man who once saw injustice and rose to protect justice was pushed into permanent darkness. And in that darkness, Syamun began to see what he could not see from the peak. Prison did not only remove his freedom, it stripped his identity. The man who was a prophet and a judge of justice was forced to grind grain like an animal. The endless turning of the mill mirrored his life, going nowhere, no escape, only dragging exhaustion. The guards mocked him. They mocked the Allah he served, everything piled onto a man once called unbeatable. But the deepest pain did not come from outside, it came from inside. In long nights without light, Syamun had nowhere left to hide from himself. No victories to cling to, no hero image to cover the mistake, only memories of every warning ignored, every chance to walk away refused, every moment he chose comfort over wakefulness. And here, in that nakedness, Syamun began returning to Allah in the deepest way, not with prayers for victory, but with complete admission of failure. No excuses, no blaming Delilah, no blaming the enemy. He faced his own responsibility and admitted that his carelessness brought him here. Syamun's repentance was not loud. It happened in silence, in whispers between him and Allah. His prayers no longer came from strength, but from total dependence. And while the Philistines believed they had won completely, they did not notice something important. Syamun's hair began to grow back. That regrowth was not an instant return of power, it was a sign of hope, a reminder that no matter how far a person falls, the door of tawbah is never sealed shut. In the valley of suffering, where Syamun had everything taken, Allah was rebuilding him in a way his years of glory never could. Not the strength of muscle, but the strength of a heart crushed, then remade. Syamun walked in darkness, but that darkness became the clearest mirror of truth about himself and about Allah. And from what looked like the lowest point of failure, a new road began to open. Not a road back to old glory, but a road toward redemption. When the Philistines decided to hold a massive celebration in the temple of their idol, they believed this was total victory. In their eyes, Syamun was fully crushed. The man who once shook the land was now a blinded prisoner in chains, dragged from the dungeon to entertain a crowd drunk on arrogance. They thought Allah's power ended with cut hair and gouged eyes. But in their self-satisfaction, they did not realize they were standing at the most dangerous moment for themselves. Syamun was brought into the center of the temple, where two enormous pillars held up the entire structure and thousands of people packed above. Laughter rose from every side. The mockery was not only aimed at him, but aimed straight at the Allah he served. But Syamun did not react as he once did. He was not angry. He was not trembling. In the silence of eyes that could no longer see light, he felt a strange calm. Not the calm of a victor, but the calm of someone who has accepted the truth about himself. In that moment, Syamun had nothing left to hold on to except Allah. No strength, no honor, no future the way people normally imagine it. And that complete emptiness made his prayer the purest it had ever been. He did not ask to live. He did not ask to regain what he lost. He asked for one thing only: to serve Allah one more time, so truth could be revealed and falsehood exposed. That prayer did not come from personal revenge. It came from the pain of someone watching the name of Allah being insulted. It did not carry arrogance. It carried the weight of a heart crushed, then rebuilt. And because of that, Allah answered, not by erasing the past, but by giving Syamun a complete chance to make amends. In that moment, strength returned to Syamun, but not the way it once had. It was no longer strength that made him confident walking into danger. It was strength placed entirely in the hands of Allah. He placed his hands on the two pillars, not as a challenger, but as someone surrendering completely. And when he pushed with every last ounce of force, it was not only wood and stone that shook, it was the Philistine illusion of power that collapsed. The temple fell in an instant. The people who laughed had no time to recognize their mistake. The destruction was indiscriminate, kings and commoners, leaders and followers. And at the center of that collapse, Syamun left the world with them. Not as a defeated man, but as someone who completed the final mission Allah allowed him to fulfill. Syamun killed more enemies in his final moment than in all the years of glory before. But the deeper point is not the number, it is the meaning of that death. He did not die in arrogance, he died in humility. Not in blind confidence, but in total dependence on Allah. His death was not the end of a tragedy. It was the closing of a purification journey. Through Syamun, Allah shows that failure is not the final verdict, that there are falls so deep a person thinks there is no way back. Yet right there, if the heart truly returns, the door of mercy is still wide open. Syamun lost everything to learn what he never fully understood at the peak. Real strength is not the ability to shake the world, but the ability to bow completely before the one who created it. Syamun's story ends in rubble, but its message stands. It reminds us that Allah does not define a person by the moment they fall, but by the moment they return. Sometimes Allah allows a person to touch the bottom of loss, not to destroy them, but to purify them from illusion and bring them back to the true position of a servant. And when a person leaves the world in that state, even if their body lies under ruins, their soul stands upright before Allah. That is not the death of a failure. It is the completion of a covenant bought back through pain, repentance, and the limitless mercy of the Most High. From here, we take a powerful lesson into life today. First, treat every blessing as an amanah. Do not ask what that blessing gets you. Ask how Allah wants you to use it. Second, learn to recognize and respect warning signs. When a relationship, a choice, or a path demands you sacrifice your principles, it is no longer just a test, it is danger. Third, never underestimate emotional manipulation. Real love never pressures you to betray your core values or your covenant with Allah. More than anything, Syamun's story teaches us that no fall is too deep to return. But that return must begin with honesty, with taking responsibility instead of blaming others, and with a heart willing to drop the illusion of personal strength and surrender fully to Allah. When tawbah is real, Allah always opens a way. Sometimes not to bring you back to your old position, but to bring you to a truer one. If you found value in this story, join the Prophetic History Explained community so we can keep exploring prophetic stories, historical lessons, and spiritual depth that help us live more awake in a modern world full of temptation and distraction. And if you want to support the channel so we can keep bringing more deep, honest, meaningful content, subscribe to Prophetic History Explained today. Your support is part of spreading these timeless lessons to more hearts.